bigger, badder, and consistently striving for greater heights than its predecessor. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is a thoroughly impressive and at times disappointing game that I love. Due to its launch issues, it quickly became a polarizing entry for many in the story of modern-day launch day fiascos. But if you're looking for a bottom line here, it is in nearly every way what a sequel and a Star Wars game should be. I'm Dennis from That's for the Birds, and this is Survivor's Guilt. We join Cal 5 years after the events of Fallen Order, where he crash lands on a frontier world. He'll continue his fight against the Empire while grappling with his place in the fight for the galaxy. All the characters have received a big boost in their visuals, their writing, and the narrative choices taken at fleshing them out really work here. New characters make a big impression, and the story gives everyone the right amount of time to connect to them, giving me a solid investment in their piece in it all. Customization is vastly improved, sure. Ponchos are nice, but I love this system. The lightsaber changes are expansive right from the go. Blaster and BD customization allow you to either match or mix however you want in between. Hair, beard, clothes, combos provide such a wide range of looks that even a cursory glance online will show you that there's a million Cals out there, like a Spider-Man Clone War fever dream. I was personally partial to the Mando Cal look.
This is the way.
It doesn't stop there. Your efforts will have a tangible effect in transforming the saloon you return to. Little side quests will pop up, rumors from patrons that you've saved will guide you towards new objectives and discoveries, and slowly, the bar will transform right as you are there, from a hive of scum and villainy to the premier pub of the Outer Rim. It is a top-tier Star Wars cantina. The music, the vibes, the patrons, the people. So nice. I love that space. But the real star of the show is the combat. and it's been substantially improved. It's hard to start anywhere though but with the new forms. I really loved everything about the double-bladed form, especially the heavy square combo that allows you to mix up the attack from a wide group range one to a more focused individual one with some really cool aerial flicks. It is the most satisfying on a controller feel level, constantly registering multiple ticks for every single swing as you barrage enemies. You'll feel the vibrations in your hand. It's really satisfying. But I love the power and weight behind the dual wield stance. It's fast and lethal, constantly able to maintain pressure and power through. By delay striking, you can quickly close gaps on enemies who back up on you. The parry special is really cool and kinda busted when you do it properly, but I think the only problem for me was that I wish it was quicker to Q. It can take a little bit of time to do the animation, which makes me feel like I can't really use it in the midst of combat, but I suppose that's a design intention to make sure that you can't just spam it. It feels powerful, it's in your face in a tangible way, and it's a major power fantasy. The blaster form quickly became my main in the game. I love how quick and nimble the form is. The back and forth between your lightsaber attack and your blaster attack creates one of the more unique combos in the game, and by carefully using the blaster during combat, you can actually parry mid-combo with the blaster, which is the most satisfying mechanic in the game. It has a square lunge attack, allows you to close the gap, was one of the faster forms, which also resembles fencing, which I really liked as well aesthetically. It also gets 3 dedicated perks, which synergize incredibly well into basically a versatile and offensive stance that allows you to attack multiple enemies in any given space. You can trudge into the middle of a group, close the gap between enemies while peppering them all with staggering blaster fire. It's really satisfying. I'm going to say that a lot. It's really satisfying. Now, what else is satisfying but Big Sword? The ultimate crossguard claymore build is at times frustrating, forcing you to be patient when you would rather get into it, but it is extremely good for bosses if you know their timing. The goblin in my brain loves it very deeply for the guts energy of it all. Like many, I too like big sword boys, and my brain feels good when I get that elusive big chunk of damage. Patience is key here though, and if you're willing to meet it at that space, you'll be heavily rewarded for it. The single sword has become almost forgettable with all of these options at play, but it is interestingly one of the more nimble forms. You can air dash strike now, allowing you to jump and close the gap between flying enemies, quickly chaining immediately into lunging slash attacks. This goes down at an angle, allowing you to quickly close the gaps between lots of enemies. Adding in air dashes, and you've got a lot of mobility here. I'd say its only real problem is that it just doesn't stack up on cool factor anymore when you have all of these other options at play. I tell you what though, I love the combat here. I love the weight of it. I love the way the lightsaber feels like you're cleaving through them and not just smacking them with a bat. The way our upgraded mobility allows us to weave in and out of conflict quicker than ever, each form providing a unique experience in engaging combat in your own preferred style. Gripes aside, combat has been expanded in every way you can imagine from the solid beginnings. There are a couple things though I'd be remiss not to say, because I am me and I like to complain. I wish there was a switch stance attack that changed 2 forms that you were using. Though the weapon switching is smoother this time around, and it does allow you to queue up your weapon switch if you're careful about when to press it during your animation, I did wish that we had the use of multiple forms while out in the world. I don't think 2 felt like enough when you had so many options at play. I wish we could have at least changed anywhere. 3 at one time would have been great, moving BD off the bottom trigger into something else. Allowing you to use 3 forms at once would have been a much better alternative, given that many of the forms overlap in terms of their crowd type usage, whereas double-bladed felt required if you wanted to tackle any sort of group combat. Something similar to Ghost of Tsushima style, where you can quickly change between the different styles in combat to suit the different enemies that you come up against, maybe making it so, similarly, crossguard stance was required to beat shield enemies, something similar to that. Either way though, I do think we should have been able to change anywhere and not at meditation centers. At that point though, we've looped back to wishing all forms were here while accessible while roaming, but maybe next time. In any case, if this is the jump that we get from Fallen Order to Survivor, I'm so excited to see what they do from Survivor to whatever comes next. Right in line with that improvement in combat is traversal. Traversal is absolutely cracked now. So much fun, especially when you get all of the tools working together seamlessly in a long string. Air dashes, wall jumps, and as always, no game is made worse by a grappling hook. I loved all of the traversal puzzles in the game, and greatly expanded mobility that came with air dashing provided both in the world and in combat itself. The difficulty in this game is well tuned to the master difficulty, with some optional bosses notwithstanding. The new enemy types and increase in variety is welcome, and really makes each planet feel expansive. There's a natural interplay going on between the encroaching Imperial forces and the occupying Bedlam raiders, all mired in the wild nature of the galaxy's outer frontiers. The environments are stunning, and really just blow my mind, from the space labs floating high above the clouds to the bioluminescent foliage of the funky caves. They bring us to incredible new locations not seen in Star Wars, but obviously in that universe, in such a tangible way. They bring life to familiar prequel landscapes like Coruscant. The world is teeming with life and beauty amidst the death and destruction. Factoring in how cinematic the game is, it really does feel like a Star Wars movie in many ways. One thing I want to highlight, especially after playing and loving God of War Ragnarok, is that one area this game truly excels at in comparison is that it shows the scale of the spaces that we move within. From the first game's climb up the Kashyyyk world tree, where the camera pans back to show just how small and insignificant Cal is in the face of this natural behemoth, so too does Survivor pull back for emphasis. It's something that always strikes me as a perfect marriage between the tighter over-the-shoulder work of modern games in action spaces and the old perspective of fixed cameras from God of War in the old days, specialized under the care of the same director, Stig Asmussen. Finally, I have to talk about the bugs. It's been a pretty buggy go of it for me. From non-game breaking, constant frame drops, screen tearing, especially on Kobo, texture pop-in, lightsaber not sheathing, to major glitches like falling out of bounds, hard freezes, along with several crashes before and after patches, and I played on the PS5. In Survivor, multiple aspects of Cal's character shine through. He's a child of war, born into it and used for it as a tool, before being forced to hide himself. His survivor's guilt plays out in many ways. He is obsessive about bringing the fight to the Empire to the point where he burned out his team, pushing them away, though one aspect I love the most is his interactions that happen aboard the Mantis. This is a family. They feel like a family. They complain and they squabble, but they joke and they play, but most importantly, they support each other. When it really matters, they come through for each other and push each other to recognize both their emotional and physical well-being at all times, constantly affirming those aspects of their reality.
We're all in on you, buddy.
You're right. It's my ship, ain't it? Greasy does it, baby!
Overall, I love this game in spite of its performance, and it's a meaningful improvement in nearly every way. The big shout out to them starting with all our powers and all of the customization that we get right from the jump. I love seeing all the different cows. I love petting and riding the animals. It's good. I love that. I love these goofy long leg motherfuckers. I love Marin and Greasy Money and the gang. It's an amazing cast, and Cal deserves to come to live action so we can see him playing in the way he's always been acting, on screen, showing that gravitas in his performance, and really translating it. So, without further ado, spoilers. We're going into spoiler world. In this game, Cal learns of a world untouched by the Empire, a chance to safely leave the fight with the ones he loves. The questions come from, will he take it? Can he turn his back on the struggles of the people? Can he reject the teachings that he grew up with, forbidding attachment? I think these are points that are deftly navigated by Cal and the supporting cast, whose perspectives are both insightful and intrinsic to the questions that plague Cal. Starting from the beginning though, there is deep thematic work at play that's mirrored in the gameplay. Like, why do we fight the Ninth Sister? Well, for a couple of reasons. For one, we didn't see her head chopped off, so she was obviously not dead. It shows Cal's growth perfectly. A boss that he first couldn't defeat, then he scrapes out a win by the skin of his teeth, and now he thoroughly whops her. It also shows that he's doing more research. He learned who she was as a Jedi. He learns what her name was, what kind of place that she came from, so that he can properly connect with her. And in that connection, it shows that he's a compassionate individual despite his arc. He tries to turn her first back to the light. Then, he accepts that it is what it is and gives her a merciful, quick end. It reminds me of Tanjiro, low-key, you know?
解放される。
五の型寒天の銃。
これはいるような感覚。少しも痛くない。苦しくもない。こんなにも穏やかな死が来るなんて。これで解放される。
But that intro was costly for Cal. His new team gone on a fight for Saw Gerrera, casualties of his war. Only Bode, his new right-hand man, remains alive and willing to continue fighting for the sake of his daughter. I'm kind of stuck on how well Survivor captures the obsession, the reckless abandon of someone who feels like they should have died and now has continuously lost the people around him, pushing some of them away, and how Cal feels guilt over being out of the game for so long in hiding. Even though he was a child, he holds that regret tight and close, and it keeps him right on the edge of darkness. If he didn't have people in his life that actually care about him, affirm his feelings, and fully support him, he would have fallen to the dark side. Marin, who takes center stage as an anchor for Cal, steals the show. On Jedha, we see their relationship flourish in new ways as she puts on a Riz clinic, absolutely wooing my boy, before affirming their trust in each other and diving headfirst into my favorite mission of the game.
Do you trust me?
Yes. Is that for luck?
No. Right.
We use air dashes and wall rides, grapple hook points as we escape down the mountain, sliding, evading a giant robot as we descend into the valley below and finally put a final stand with all the spectacle the game can muster. all throughout, we're building even closer bonds with Cal and Marin. I think it's an interesting take on the idea that it isn't bonds that lead to the darkness, but ultimately it's those bonds that keep us from it. It's a direct challenge to the way of the Jedi. From the first fight with the Ninth Sister, where he goes first for reconciliation and peace, to a swift, merciful end when that's rejected, it's clear that he's grown emotionally and physically. Even with Rayvis, he attempts peaceful reconciliation. With Dagon, he tries to pull him back to fight together. Each time he meets an enemy that could be turned against the Empire, that's his focus. So when we beat Dagon for the final time, an incredible fight with some insane High Republic force powers on display, it feels almost anticlimactic. Aside from the obviously skittish behavior by Bode, which I personally chalked up to him being just absolutely shook by the fact that he just died and got brought back to life. You start to reevaluate your choices when that kind of shit happens. So we head back to Jeddah, where one of the greatest moments in the game actually belongs to Cere, whose last stand against Vader is one of the coolest in any Star Wars game. His gameplay behavior is perfectly in line with his characterization. Supremely talented, immensely strong, prideful and arrogant. He clearly doesn't take the first two phases at all seriously, and by the end, he's taken enough damage that he can't do anything but give it his full attention. And that's when the full intimidation comes out. Before, he lets you press the action. He rarely starts combos, and when he does, he doesn't start long combos, preferring his casual one-armed sword interaction style. In later phases, he's forced to get serious. He starts swinging the sword with two hands, longer combos mixed with unblockables. He throws the surrounding Jedi archives at us, serving as a sort of spit in the face at Cere as she's pelted by the remains of her new life's work. The developers were smart enough when making us control Cere that they gave us a fully upgraded moveset with a capital M. She is a Jedi Master. It stands out because her strength cleaves through enemies in ways that Cal's just doesn't at that point in the game. She's a beefed up character. She does more damage, she has a unique moveset to Cal's, and is iron-willed in the face of the big man Vader.
None of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you.
That's it! You're locked in here with me!
And while there's normally no tension in a fight where we know one of the combatants survives the fight, the worry comes from what's going to happen to Cere. All that builds up so that when the inevitable occurs, you're still holding out hope that it won't. The real emotional damage is twofold here though. It comes swiftly after. When Cal reappears, it can be hard to pick up on, but the reality is our time as Cere was Cal experiencing her final moments through his psychometry. We cradle her lifeless body as the pangs of anger and sadness explode from Cal. The emotions, the spectacle, the music, each piece comes together like a space opera reaching its darkest crescendo. From that moment on, Cal has been irrevocably changed. The betrayal of Bode just absolutely shatters his focus. He stops reasoning, he just acts. His force menu becomes bathed in red, a foreboding and hateful hue showing the depths of his mental health. How close to the dark side is he? How much does it grip his heart? The 1-2 punch of Bode's slowly changing attitude, morphing into full-blown betrayal, and the subsequent reveal of his force ability are incredibly effective to me, as is the speeder chase that occurs right before it. It is all such a monumental moment. You can feel the tension in the air as we hunt him down, only to be surprised by the fact that he uses the force against us.
Why, Bode? For this! We fought for that together, and you're just gonna hand it to the Empire!
I'm not giving it to the Empire.
You killed Master Cordova.
Cal, you don't have time for this fight. Something terrible is coming for that archive. Listen to your instincts. You know I'm right.
What have you done?
If you want to keep your family safe, you get them out of there. Right now.
What have you done? You can't be.
You're not the only one who survived.
You know, in most games, I think like many, when a new person is added, I will often wonder aloud, so when are they gonna betray us? And with Bode, that certainly rang true early, but over the game, I couldn't help but think maybe I jumped the gun. I had assumed maybe Z, the robot, would be reprogrammed to betray us as leaving him as a red herring. Our relationship felt real. Their connection felt genuine, which is, I suppose, the point. It's an easy-to-place feeling, though, betrayal. I think we've all felt it in some measure at some point. Thoughts spring up in your head like lightning strikes. What? Why? How couldn't I tell? In this instance, though, it goes deeper. Why couldn't anyone sense that Bode had the Force? Why wouldn't the Masters have known him from their records? Questions that seem completely impossible to reconcile without bending over backwards quickly become clear in an incredibly natural way. He was a Jedi spy used by the Republic, kept off the books, taught to hide himself, his presence, his identity, become a space chameleon. So when he struck a deal with Denvik, his old liaison in the Republic's secret unit, now turned ISB lackey, it came with strings. His only goal was safety of his daughter after the death of his wife, a death that changed him too, but it led him to commit atrocities, hunting down his own kind, working against the Republic's interests, working against the rebels' forces, and ultimately putting his daughter in the crosshairs of another enemy. While Cal is racked with grief and guilt, all the anger and sorrow building in him, he sneaks into the ISB base, but by the end, he is tapping into the dark side of the Force for the first time, slowly letting it bleed over, his vision obscuring and stifling. His powers were starkly contrasted by the incredible power Seer used as a Jedi Master before, and it's now creeping towards a measure of equality. He rips open doors with his bare hands in the Force. He fights through hordes of elite soldiers before finally teetering right on the precipice of self-destruction. Only Merrin, whose presence would be once called an attachment that could lead to the dark side, is recontextualized here as a tie to the light. It's her love, like Luke's love for his father that allowed him to win the battle for his soul. But Cal can only turn back so far from his emotions. He accepts them. He begins to mold them into this complex form that he can manage. His menu background, which originally changed from blue to red, comes back after the end of the game, mirroring his mindset to a more peaceful place that draws on it when needed, as opposed to always being consumed by it. And only in the end, when he tries for reconciliation first and then retribution last, does he finally learn to ride that razor's edge of the Force, tapping into it as needed, enhancing his powers while maintaining his connection to the light. In many ways, he's a true Grey Jedi that the new canon just hasn't seen. I mean, my man's got a goth girlfriend and uses a blaster. This just isn't your grandpa's Jedi anymore. Ultimately though, the ending is heavy if you have brought into the relationship so far, which I did. I sympathized with them both and wanted nothing more than a way to avoid a lethal final conflict. I wanted them to turn their swords at a common enemy in this new fortress of safety. But while Cal has a family, one who supports and seeks to understand both his needs and wants realistically and checks him where they can, Bode, out of fear, begins to see his daughter as purely a person to protect at all costs, regardless of her wishes. The dark side morphs his perception of their relationship to the point that he indiscriminately strikes at Cal and Marin, putting his daughter Kata in harm's way. Even then, Cal offers peace, a way forward. Bode just can't see past his own choices, though, and chooses death, forsaking the daughter he had given up everything for.
Bruh.
People have pushed back on just how frankly stupid that choice is, and, well, yeah, it's almost as though the dark side is irrational. It's perfectly in line with what we've seen from the dark side users in the past. People who have hurt the ones closest to them because they've been convinced of themselves in the power that they've gained to protect them. Their arrogance, they self-convince themselves and allow that force to overwhelm them in their mind. He's like Space Joel with even less reason to do what he did. Either way, I love the emotional weight that ends this story. Cal killing Bode with the blaster that he got from him, as well as how he picks up Dagon's will and turns it against the Empire, instead of some Dune-style galactic genocide, a true refuge for those on the path, and a way of building up forces for the fight to come. So, what does come next? Seer's Force Ghost provides one last push of motivation as Cal sets off to continue the fight and guide Kata forward. I think a third game feels perfectly poised to build off this story. Where Fallen Order was more invested in the goings-on of what we knew about the Star Wars universe, Survivor dipped its toes into a pool that we haven't really spent much time swimming in. Next game, I want them to put on their scuba gear and get all the way into the implications of the hidden path, building a secret Jedi Order that could strike out when the moment is right. Having not seen them in other places and in other stories, the assumption is they just didn't get the job done. But there are many stories to be told, and this galaxy is vast. Its stories could fill multiple archives, and I can see a hidden threat looming in the outer wilds that Cal could be perfectly poised to head off. Anybody feeling some Yuuzhan Vogg vibes? How about a Ahsoka tie-in with Thrawn? I think they've already done a lot of the heavy lifting to establish his character, and establish him as a pretty strong Jedi, which can be used in some really top-tier forces. I just think it would be the perfect time to integrate him into the main story. I love the Mantis gang, this world, Scuba, Turgle, how my garden on top of my bar with an aquarium and a DJ is my own space. It all molds into a world that feels immersive in all of the best ways, that constantly sucked me in, that constantly made me invested in building up a space for others to enjoy as much as I did. This game is a great reflection on the very concept of survival. These characters are all mired in conflicting feelings of regret and hope. We see the lengths they go to stay alive, to keep their family safe, and to weigh the choice of self-sacrifice versus self-imposed exile. Ultimately, it shows that the bonds we share are greater than the cost they incur, and they're worth it in the end. Thanks for watching.